Nice ride. Shame you had to steal it. Mind telling me who it really belongs to?
It belongs to me, officer. Registration's in the glove box. My name is Daniel Cross.
Guess you borrowed that name too. Someone like you doesn't own a...
Officer Trevor Lang, badge number 5947 of the Westfield Police Department, made the worst decision of his 14-year career when he pulled over a black Mercedes-Benz driving through the upscale Riverdale shopping district at 3:15 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. He approached the driver's window with his hand resting on his weapon, looked at the black woman behind the wheel, and demanded, "Where did you steal this car from? That's the only way someone like you is driving a Mercedes." When she calmly refused to step out of the vehicle without legal cause, he grabbed her door, yanked her out forcefully, and slammed her against the hood in handcuffs while a crowd of shoppers recorded everything on their phones. What Lang didn't know was that the composed woman he had just brutalized was Danielle Cross, appointed as the state attorney general just 1 week earlier and set to officially assume her role on Monday morning, and that this single act of racial profiling caught on camera would cost him his badge, his freedom, his family, and every piece of the life that he had built on years of unchecked bias. Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where you're tuning in from. If you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, fairness, and respect, no matter their skin color, then make sure you like this video and subscribe. Danielle Cross had spent her entire Saturday morning doing something completely ordinary. At 42 years old, with 15 years of experience as a prosecutor and a reputation for being thorough, precise, and unshakable under pressure, she had just been appointed to the highest law enforcement position in the state. The governor had announced it publicly 1 week ago, and starting Monday at 8 a.m., she would officially oversee every prosecution, every legal policy, and every law enforcement accountability measure across the entire state. But today she was off the clock, driving her personal Mercedes-Benz through Riverdale's shopping plaza with the backseat full of items she had purchased for her new office. Picture frames for her family photos, a desk organizer, new business card holders, small touches to make the state attorney's office feel like hers. She had worked hard for this car, saved for years. It was a symbol of everything she had earned through late nights, difficult cases, and a career built on integrity. The black Mercedes gleamed in the afternoon sunlight as she drove carefully through the plaza parking lot, obeying every traffic rule, her hands relaxed on the steering wheel. She was thinking about Monday, about the reform she wanted to implement, about the case files waiting on her desk. She wasn't thinking about being pulled over because she had done absolutely nothing wrong. Officer Trevor Lang had been patrolling the Riverdale area for most of his 14-year career, and he had developed what he called instincts. Those instincts told him that certain people didn't belong in certain places, and when he saw the black Mercedes with a black woman driving, every assumption in his mind activated immediately. Expensive car, black driver, upscale neighborhood. Something was off. Lang had been the subject of 22 civilian complaints over his career, every single one alleging racial profiling, excessive force, or unlawful detention. Every single complaint had been dismissed by the same internal affairs investigator who had been clearing Lang's record for over a decade. Lang knew his patterns. He targeted black and Latino drivers in wealthy areas, pulled them over for vague reasons, and pushed until he found something or they gave up and left. He had never faced real consequences, and that confidence made him reckless. His patrol car was parked near the plaza entrance when he spotted Danielle's Mercedes. His partner, Officer Kyle Stevens, sat in the passenger seat finishing paperwork from their last call. Stevens was younger, only 4 years on the force, and he had learned quickly that when Lang got that look in his eyes, it was better to stay quiet and let him handle it. Lang pointed at the Mercedes. "That one, we're pulling her over." Stevens looked up, confused. "For what? She's not speeding." "Just watch," Lang said, hitting the lights and pulling out behind the Mercedes. Danielle saw the flashing lights in her rearview mirror and felt her stomach tighten. She had prosecuted enough cases to know exactly what this could be, but she forced herself to stay calm. She signaled, pulled into an empty parking spot near the plaza's main entrance, and placed both hands on the steering wheel where they would be visible. Her phone was mounted on the dashboard, and she activated the voice recording feature with a single tap. Everything that happened next would be documented. Lang stepped out of the patrol car with the purposeful stride of someone who had done this hundreds of times. Stephen stayed in the vehicle, watching through the windshield, already sensing that this stop didn't feel right, but unwilling to challenge his senior partner. Lang approached the driver's side window, and before Danielle could even greet him, he leaned down and spoke with absolute certainty in his voice. "Where did you steal this car from?" Lang asked, his tone not questioning but accusing. "That's the only way someone like you is driving a Mercedes." Danielle felt the words hit her like a physical blow, but her face remained completely calm. She had spent 15 years in courtrooms maintaining composure under pressure, and she wasn't about to lose it now. "Officer, I own this vehicle. It's registered in my name. I haven't committed any crime. Can you tell me why you pulled me over?" Lang didn't answer her question. He straightened up slightly, his hand still resting near his weapon. "License and registration, now." "I'll provide both," Danielle said evenly, her voice steady and professional. "But I'm asking you to state the reason for this stop. What traffic violation did I commit?" "You're in a stolen vehicle," Lang said flatly, as if it were an established fact rather than a baseless accusation. "License and registration." Danielle reached slowly for her glove compartment, narrating her movements. "I'm reaching for my registration now. My wallet is in my purse on the passenger seat." She pulled out the registration document and her license, handing both through the window. Lang took them without looking at her face, studying the documents under the sunlight. The registration clearly showed the vehicle belonged to Danielle Cross. The license matched perfectly. Everything was legitimate, current, and legal. Lang stared at the documents for several seconds, and Danielle could see the moment when he realized he had no legal justification for this stop. A reasonable officer would have apologized, returned the documents, and let her go. Trevor Lang was not a reasonable officer. His ego had been challenged, his assumption had been proven wrong, and admitting mistake felt like weakness, so he doubled down. "These could be fake," Lang said, handing the documents back through the window. "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle so I can verify ownership." Danielle's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath now. "Officer, you have my registration, you have my license, everything matches. You have no legal basis to remove me from this vehicle. What is the actual reason for this stop?" Lang's face flushed with irritation. Inside the patrol car, Stephen shifted uncomfortably, watching the interaction and knowing this was escalating in exactly the wrong direction. A small crowd of shoppers had started to notice the police presence, some slowing their walk to observe, others pulling out phones. "Step out of the car," Lang repeated, his voice harder now, more aggressive. "Last warning." "Officer, I'm asserting my Fourth Amendment rights," Danielle said clearly, making sure her phone recording captured every word. "You do not have probable cause to search this vehicle or remove me from it. I'm asking you one more time to articulate the legal justification for this stop." That was the moment when Trevor Lang made his final, irreversible mistake. He reached for her door handle, yanked it open with force, and grabbed Danielle's arm. "You're coming out whether you like it or not." Danielle didn't resist, but she spoke clearly and loudly. "I am not resisting. I am complying under protest and duress. You are physically removing me from my vehicle without cause." Lang pulled her out of the Mercedes, spun her around, and forced her against the hood of the car. The shopping bags in her backseat shifted and fell as the vehicle rocked slightly from the impact. He pulled her arms behind her back and snapped handcuffs around her wrists, tightening them more than necessary. The crowd of shoppers gasped. At least 6 phones were recording now, capturing every second of a state attorney general being brutalized by an officer whose career was about to end in spectacular fashion. Stevens finally stepped out of the patrol car, his face pale as he approached. "Lang, what's going on?" "Stolen vehicle, uncooperative suspect," Lang said, breathing heavily from the adrenaline of the confrontation. She refused to comply. Danielle turned her head slightly, looking directly at Lang's body camera. Her voice was calm, clear, and precise. "My name is Danielle Cross. I am the State Attorney General for this state, appointed 1 week ago. I officially assume my duties Monday morning." Officer Lang, you have just committed multiple felonies on camera, and I will personally ensure you face every single consequence the law allows. Lang didn't hear her. Or maybe he heard her and didn't process it. Or maybe he processed it and chose not to believe it, because believing it would mean accepting that his entire life was about to collapse. He simply stood there, holding the arm of the handcuffed woman, while Stephen's eyes went wide with horror and the phones kept recording, and the moment that would define the rest of Trevor Lang's existence played out under the bright Saturday afternoon sun. Officer Stevens stood frozen for a moment, staring at Danielle in handcuffs, then at Lang, then back at Danielle. His mind was racing through what she had just said, trying to process whether it could possibly be true. He had seen the news coverage last week about the new state attorney general appointment, but he hadn't paid close attention to the details. Now, looking at this woman who spoke with absolute calm authority even while handcuffed against a car hood, a sick feeling settled in his stomach. "Lang, did you hear what she just said?" Stevens asked quietly, his voice tight with worry. "She's lying," Lang shot back immediately, still gripping Danielle's arm. "Trying to intimidate us. Probably does this every time she gets caught. I've seen it 100 times. Danielle turned her head slightly, addressing Stevens directly. "Officer Stevens, I recommend you distance yourself from this situation immediately. Your body camera is recording, and right now it's documenting that you witnessed an unlawful detention and arrest. If you continue to participate, you'll share responsibility for what happens next." Stevens' Tuyes took an involuntary step backward. Something about the way she spoke, the precision of her words, the complete lack of panic or anger made him believe her. He pulled out his radio and keyed the mic. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. Can you send a supervisor to our location? Riverdale Plaza, North Parking Lot." Lang spun around, furious. "What are you doing? I didn't ask for a supervisor." "I think we need one," Stevens said, and his tone carried an edge now. "Something's not right here, and I want someone else to make the call on what happens next." The crowd of shoppers had grown larger. A woman in her 50s stepped forward, her phone still recording. "Officer, I watched the whole thing. She didn't do anything wrong. She was just sitting in her car and you dragged her out." Lang pointed at the woman aggressively. "Ma'am, step back right now or I'll cite you for interference." "I'm standing on public property recording a public servant," the woman replied, not moving. "That's my First Amendment right, and you know it." More voices joined in from the crowd. "Let her go, she has registration." "This is ridiculous." Someone call the news. Lang felt the situation slipping out of his control, and that feeling made him more defensive, more determined to prove he had been right to make this stop in the first place. He walked around to the passenger side of Danielle's Mercedes and peered through the windows at the shopping bags in the back seat. Office supplies, picture frames, organizational items, all with receipts visible inside the bags. Nothing suspicious, nothing illegal, just ordinary purchases from ordinary stores. But Lang had committed now, and backing down felt impossible. "I'm going to search this vehicle," Lang announced, reaching for the door handle. "You don't have probable cause for a search," Danielle said from where she stood against the hood, still handcuffed. "I don't consent. Anything you find will be inadmissible, and you'll add an illegal search to your growing list of violations." "I smell marijuana," Lang lied, saying the words loudly enough for his body camera to capture. "That gives me probable cause." Stevens closed his eyes briefly, knowing that was a fabrication. He had been sitting in the patrol car the entire time, and there was no smell of marijuana anywhere near this vehicle. Lang was a manufacturing justification after the fact, and Stevens knew that supervisors reviewing this footage later would see right through it. "There is no marijuana in my vehicle," Danielle stated clearly. "Officer Lang just lied on camera to justify an illegal search. Officer Stevens, you're a witness to that false statement." Lang ignored her and opened the passenger door, beginning to search through the glove compartment. He found the vehicle manual, insurance paperwork, registration duplicates, and maintenance records. Everything properly organized, everything legitimate. He moved to the back seat, going through the shopping bags, pulling out office supplies and examining them as if they might be evidence of something. The crowd watched in disbelief as an officer desperately searched a car for any justification for a stop that never should have happened. A black sedan pulled into the parking lot with a supervisor designation on the license plate. Sergeant Marcus Thompson stepped out, a 25-year veteran with silver hair and the tired eyes of someone who had seen every kind of police call imaginable. He took in the scene quickly. Black woman in handcuffs, expensive Mercedes, officers searching the vehicle, crowd of witnesses with phones out. His expression hardened immediately because he recognized the pattern, and he knew this was going to be bad. Lang, step away from the vehicle, Thompson ordered as he approached. Stevens, what's the situation? Stevens opened his mouth to answer, but Lang spoke first. Stolen vehicle stop, Sergeant. Driver was uncooperative, refused to provide proper identification, and I detected the odor of marijuana, which gave me cause to search. Thompson looked at Danielle, still handcuffed against the hood of her own car, and something in her calm, dignified bearing made him walk directly to her rather than continue talking to Lang. Ma'am, what's your version of events? And that's when everything Lang had built his career on began to fall apart. Danielle looked directly at Sergeant Thompson, her voice steady and precise despite being handcuffed. Officer Lang pulled me over without cause, accused me of stealing my own vehicle based solely on my race, refused to verify my legitimate registration, fabricated a marijuana claim, conducted an illegal search, and physically removed me from my car when I asserted my Fourth Amendment rights. Everything I just said is documented on multiple body cameras and civilian recordings. Thompson studied her face, noting the complete absence of fear or anger, just cold professional assessment. He turned to Lang. Show me the stolen vehicle report. Lang hesitated. Dispatch called it in. Thompson pulled out his radio. Dispatch, any reports of a stolen black Mercedes in the Riverdale area today? The response came back immediately. Negative, Sergeant. No such report on file. Lang's face flushed. I mean, it matched the description of vehicles stolen in this area recently. What description? Thompson asked, his voice dropping lower. Be specific. Lang couldn't answer because there was no description. There was only bias, only assumption, only the same pattern he had repeated for 14 years. Thompson walked to the Mercedes and examined the registration documents lying on the driver's seat. Everything matched perfectly. Registered owner Danielle Cross, current tags, valid insurance. He ran the plates on his portable terminal. Clean, no warrants, no flags, nothing. Why is she in handcuffs? Thompson asked quietly. She was uncooperative, Lang said, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. Thompson looked at Stevens. Officer Stevens, what did you observe? Stevens swallowed hard, knowing his answer would determine his own future. Sergeant, I observed Officer Lang pull over a vehicle with no apparent violation. I heard him accuse the driver of theft without evidence. I saw him remove her from the vehicle when she asked for legal justification. I did not smell any marijuana. Lang's head snapped towards Stevens, betrayal written across his face, but Stevens wouldn't meet his eyes. Thompson turned back to Danielle. Ma'am, I apologize for this situation. Are you an attorney? No, Danielle said simply. Thompson looked confused. You're not? I'm not just an attorney. Before she could continue, Lang laughed bitterly. Oh, here we go. Let me guess, you're a judge? Maybe the governor? He turned to Thompson with a smug expression. See, Sarge? She's lying. Probably lied about everything else, too. Thompson's jaw tightened. Lang, shut your mouth. He looked back at Danielle. Ma'am, if you're not an attorney, then what? I'm the state attorney general, Danielle said, her voice cutting through the parking lot like a blade. The silence that followed was absolute. Thompson's face went completely white. Stevens took 2 steps backward. Lang's smug expression froze, then cracked. That's impossible, Lang said, his voice shaking now. The state attorney general is David Richardson. I've met him at department events. David Richardson retired 2 months ago, Danielle replied, her eyes locked on Lang. I was appointed 1 week ago as his replacement. I assume my duties officially on Monday morning. Lang shook his head frantically. No, you're lying. This is... Sergeant Thompson, Danielle interrupted, still calm. My state identification is in my wallet in the front seat. May I have permission to retrieve it? Thompson moved immediately, carefully retrieving her wallet and opening it. Inside was the official identification card bearing the seal of the State Attorney General's office, her photograph, and her full title. His hands trembled slightly as he held it. "Ma'am, I'm removing these restraints immediately," Thompson said, moving behind her to unlock the handcuffs. "On behalf of the department, I deeply apologize." As the cuffs came off, Danielle rubbed her wrists where the metal had bitten into her skin. She turned to face Lang directly, and when she spoke, her voice was colder than anything he had ever heard. "I've spent the last week reviewing case files in preparation for my role. Your name appeared 22 times in civilian complaints, all dismissed. I was planning to investigate those starting next month." She paused, letting the weight settle. "You just moved yourself to the top of my list." Lang's face drained of all color. His career, his pension, his freedom, everything he had built was crumbling in real time, and he finally understood that the woman standing in front of him had the power to destroy him completely. Monday morning arrived like a storm that had been building for years. Danielle Cross walked into the State Attorney General's office at 7:30 in the morning, greeted by staff who had no idea what had happened 2 days earlier. She smiled, shook hands, accepted congratulations, and then requested an immediate private meeting with Police Chief Warren Mitchell. He arrived at 8:15, expecting a routine courtesy meeting with the new state attorney. Instead, Danielle showed him the footage. Body camera recordings from both Lang and Stevens, dash camera footage from the patrol car, 6 different civilian recordings from witnesses. The chief watched in complete silence as Officer Trevor Lang accused Danielle of stealing her own vehicle, dragged her from the car, and handcuffed the woman who would become his boss 48 hours later. When the footage ended, Chief Mitchell sat back in his chair, his face gray. "This happened to you," he said quietly, not a question but a statement of horror. "This happens to people every day," Danielle replied. "The difference is, I have the power to do something about it." Officer Trevor Lang was suspended within 2 hours of that meeting. By Wednesday, Internal Affairs had opened a full investigation. By Friday, the findings were complete. Lang's 14-year career showed a clear pattern of racial profiling. 89% of his traffic stops involved Black or Latino drivers. In affluent neighborhoods, that number jumped to 94%. The 22 complaints that had been dismissed were reopened, and this time investigators found what they should have found years ago: fabricated probable cause, illegal searches, excessive force, a system that had protected Lang instead of the people he was supposed to serve. Danielle recused herself from direct prosecution due to conflict of interest, but she appointed a special prosecutor she trusted completely. The Federal Department of Justice opened a parallel civil rights investigation. Criminal charges were filed within 6 weeks: deprivation of rights under color of law, false imprisonment, filing false police reports, official misconduct. Trevor Lang faced 5 to 8 years in federal prison. The news coverage was relentless. Video of the traffic stop went viral, viewed millions of times across the country. Other victims came forward, 8 people who had experienced similar treatment from Lang over the years. They joined together in a class-action lawsuit seeking $8.4 million in damages. The city settled for the full amount 9 months later. Lang was held personally liable for $620,000. He declared bankruptcy, lost his house to foreclosure, and watched his wife file for divorce and take custody of their 2 children. The criminal trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Lang was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison and 3 years supervised release after his release. He would never work in law enforcement again anywhere in the United States. Danielle used her position to implement sweeping statewide reforms. Mandatory racial bias training became a requirement for all officers. Body cameras could not be turned off during any public interaction. Civilian review boards were given real investigative power. Early warning systems flagged officers whose stop patterns showed racial disparities. 23 officers across the state resigned rather than face the new scrutiny. 5 years later, Danielle was re-elected as state attorney general by the widest margin in state history. Traffic stop racial disparities had dropped 64%. Police misconduct complaints were down 71%. The system was changing, slowly but measurably. Trevor Lang was released from federal prison after serving 4 years. He was 50 years old, living in a small apartment, working retail for minimum wage. One evening, he saw Danielle on television receiving an award for criminal justice reform. The news segment mentioned the traffic stop that had started everything. He turned off the television and sat in the darkness of his apartment, finally understanding that one moment of racial bias had cost him absolutely everything. The lesson was simple and brutal. The badge doesn't make you powerful. The Constitution does, and when you violate it, consequences will find you eventually. If you believe accountability is the only way to fix broken systems, share this story with someone who needs to see it. Drop a comment below about what real police reform looks like in your community. We read every single one. And if these stories matter to you, if you believe justice should apply equally to everyone regardless of who they are, hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories coming that will open your eyes to how change actually happens when people refuse to stay silent.